Your podcast sounds like poo-poo. It does.
Your podcast sounds like poo-poo. Okay? Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Pod Sound School. I'm Studio Steve.
And I'm Veronica.
Yeah, and we're really excited to be here today. This is a fun episode. We are recording this episode live on Twitter. We always do that every Tuesday at noon Mountain Time. So if you're listening to our podcast, if you are watching our YouTube channel, please come say hi and leave us a rating and a review so that we know that you're listening. That really helps us a lot to keep going morally.
Yes.
And also, we're very active on Instagram at Pod Sound School. You can come check us out there and say hi. And we also have a Facebook group, Podcasting for Bosses.
Podcasting for Bosses, yes.
So come find us there as well. And also, we have an Overachievers.
Our Overachievers Club on Patreon. If you like us, if you like the Pod Sound School and what we do every week, we go above and beyond to put great content out there for podcasters, for entrepreneurs, for business owners, for content creators. So if you're one of them and you're tuning in every week, just make sure you hop on Patreon and give us your pledge.
Yeah, your pledge will really help us a lot.
We need your support to keep the doors of the Pod Sound School open. We need your support so we can keep creating this awesome content that we put out for free every single week.
Yeah.
No fail.
Check us out over there on patreon.com.
If you do it, we'll get a notification and we'll make sure that you get a lot of love.
Yes.
We'll call you. We'll go to your house. We'll hunt you down.
If you're okay
we'll
with
arrest you. Just kidding.
If you're looking for a new stalker,
then
come find us on Patreon.
You want a Colombian stalker?
So today's episode is can be a little bit of a hurtful one.
Yes.
It's all about the most common mistakes that podcasters make.
Yes.
And this is one that is true to our heart because we are constantly making mistakes, and we've made all of these. We have reviewed hundreds of podcasts, and we've talked with hundreds of podcasters, and we're also working with clients to help them improve their shows and get their podcasts up and running and reaching a big audience. So we've compiled some mistakes, the most common mistakes that podcasters make, and we want to share them with you on today's episode. So hopefully you can keep yourself from making them.
Yes. And we're going to start with the podcaster's heartbreaking dilemma. And it goes something like this.
Wait, hold on. I think you should read this very dramatically.
Okay.
You
You spend countless hours planning, researching, recording, learning, and figuring out how to podcast. You're excited because your voice is being broadcasted on the main podcast directories, and anybody, anywhere, can now listen to your show. But months have passed, and your show is not picking up, and you can't seem to get more than a few listeners. So now what?
Oh, maybe you got a little too passionate.
Sorry. Will you keep putting out episodes for just a small handful of people? Or will you quit producing your show? No! Don't do it. Don't do it! It's never too late to turn your show around, and the Pod Sound School is here to help.
Yes. And with that, we're going to dive into
Mistake number 1. Not doing enough audience research. If you don't know who you are creating your podcast for, chances are that you will never find them, or they will never find you. Maybe you do have an idea of who your audience is, but you are creating content that they aren't really interested in because you haven't asked them.
You got to ask people.
You have to ask people.
Do some research.
You haven't done enough research to find out what kind of content they most want to consume, or even worse, you have no idea who your audience is, and you're creating content for yourself. There are many ways to find and connect with your ideal listener. But before you do this, you need to be able to describe who is your ideal listener. And And you need to describe this person to the detail. What they like, what they don't like, what are their values, their beliefs. Facebook groups are a great tool. Groups that are centered or that are aligned with people's interests.
Yeah, people's interests and topics and niches.
So if your podcast show is about baking, it's about cooking, then you can go and find a Facebook group that has those kind of people. And then go ask them questions directly. Yeah,
ask them questions directly. Don't invite them over to your podcast necessarily.
No.
Don't go into other Facebook groups and promote yourself shamelessly.
You want to pique their brain and see what they want, what they're interested in.
What's your biggest struggle with baking? What's your favorite thing to bake? If you could have any, I don't know, baking dream come true for you, what would it be? You get the idea. Find places, find where your niche is at, and go chat with them.
Find them. And ask them questions. This
what
is
they
so
like to
valuable.
Consume, what kind of content they like. And do this market research on a regular basis because time changes. People's interests change. Even in 3 months is a long time, you know? So
another place that you can find your ideal listener, it's on Instagram using hashtags.
Yeah, Instagram or Twitter using hashtags.
So you can use hashtag BuzzBaker or Babe Caker.
I'm a babe caker.
I'm a babe kicker. So you go and find this hashtag and you're going to see a number of people who have posted using this hashtag, which means that they have the same interest as you.
Yeah.
And you can like what they're posting, see what they're posting, ask them questions directly. You will be amazed at how receptive people can be on social media.
It's crazy. And then also that you can run polls and surveys, and you can go to forums like Quora or Reddit.
And we have used Quora.
Yeah, and people are asking a lot of questions there. And that's actually a good way if you can answer their questions directly and you can build relationships there. That can take some time, but those are good resources as well. You can also go to answerthepublic.com and just type in a topic and it will show you what people are searching for on Google. That can create some good inspiration too.
It's a great place.
So let's move on to number 2, mistakes with your title.
Oh boy.
Okay, so it's very easy for us to become connected to creative ideas and cool sounding titles that mean something to us, that we become attached to. And oftentimes we're too quick to settle on a title for our show, and we wind up with either titles that are too long, titles that are hard to pronounce, and titles that don't match the topic of our shows. And another big mistake is to fail to do research and to find out if anyone else has the same or similar titles that we do. And this is something we've come in contact with a ton when we're doing rate review swaps and when we're reaching out and looking at other podcasters' shows, is many times we don't know which one is them because there's 5 other people that have very similar names, sometimes the same exact name. So before you settle on your title, if you're just starting, and then also it's just good to take some time with this and be open and honest with yourself. If you've made the mistake with your title, if you're having a hard time with your title, why not do a relaunch and re-establish yourself? If you're not finding any listeners, don't give up on podcasting. Don't get discouraged. Reinvent yourself. Take 2 weeks off. Tell your listeners that you do have, the small handful that you do have right now, that you're going to take some time off. And that's a perfect opportunity to ask them, hey, we're going to change our title. What do you think we should change it to? Reach out and poll. People love helping. People love the opportunity of contributing. It just makes us feel great about ourselves to contribute to other people, especially if they're already your listeners. And then let's just go ahead and move on to mistake number 3.
Poor branding or no branding at all.
Or no branding at all.
Yeah. And I know what you're thinking. I just want to have a podcast. I don't need to think about branding. Wrong. If you are publishing something for people to listen, read, watch, or consume, you are a brand. You need to think about branding. Your logo, your artwork, your podcast cover art, color schemes, fonts, and even music selection have to be consistent on every platform, including your website, the podcast directories, and each social media account.
Yes, this is very important because strong branding gives you authority and helps your show to stand out. And people are just going to take you more seriously. They're going to recognize you. Oh, those are those people I just saw on Facebook, and now I'm seeing them on Twitter.
So if you're a big time hipster, just show your hipster through your colors and fonts and the vibe that you want to give to your brand. Think how fun it is to build your brand.
Yeah, it's really fun. And so take some time to evaluate. Do I have fonts that I use every time? Do I have colors that I use every time? Images? What about the music that I put in my podcast episode? Does the music represent my niche? Am I putting heavy metal at the beginning of my podcast, or am I using that ukulele music that they use for motivational podcasts?
Like remember yesterday the heavy metal music for a financial...
For the financial podcast
podcast.
Yeah.
I don't think people invest in money like... I may be wrong.
Maybe they do. I don't know. Maybe they've done an incredible amount of... Yeah, I don't think so.
No, not heavy metal. No, it will give me anxiety. I wouldn't invest with them.
No heavy metal.
No.
Anyway, so yeah, that's it. And let's move on now to mistake number 4. Sloppy description.
Or no description.
Or no description at all. And here what we mean by description is this show description. And generally, this is something you set up through your website or your web host that goes to all of the podcast directories. And this is a really critical section to consider because it's like one of the main things that a person looks at or has to judge whether or not they want to listen to your podcast. Veronica used the analogy of walking into a bookstore and you see a book that has a really cool cover that really entices you and you'd really like to read this book, but there's no description on it. And you really want to give the book a chance, but you'd practically have to read through the whole book to even know what the book's about.
Yeah, to find out what the book's about. And this is something that every time I see it I just can't believe it.
Yeah.
Please spend some time writing a description.
It's hard enough as it is to get people over to the podcast directory to give you a shot. And at this point, it gives you a chance to catch them, to invite them into your show, to tell them about your personality. You can be creative. You can be funny. Use a lot of descriptive words. Really spend some time here. This is like your most important copy probably that you'll write for your podcast.
It's like the elevator pitch for your podcast.
Yeah.
Don't make it too long because when I see long ones, I'm like, I know I'm not going to read all that.
And I think we can move on to number 5.
Number 5.
Lack.
Number 5.
Of social media strategy.
Lack of social media strategy. In the last few weeks, we've been talking about social media so much that I'm sure you are fed up with our BS. You don't want to hear about social media anymore, but let me tell you, social media is here to stay. So get familiar with it. One of the things that you need to keep in mind is to be intentional with every single piece of social media content that you publish. Don't publish just to publish. Don't be on social media for the sake of being on social media. Don't open an Instagram account or a Twitter account and just to have one. No, you have to really learn the rules of the platform and you need to know how to play them.
A lot of social media strategists use this term, the 80-20 rule, which is when we first get onto a social media platform as podcasters, our first inclination is to just promote our show, right? New episode out, come check me out, come check me out, come check me out. This is actually not the most effective strategy because it doesn't make Twitter happy, it doesn't make Instagram happy. And it's not really making the platform happy because the platform is designed algorithmically to keep people on the platform. It doesn't want people to click over and go to your podcast. So it's all about making micro content with mistake number 1, doing topical research and audience research and find out what they like to consume.
What they're interested in.
And you're going to have different audience on Twitter than you have on Instagram and entertain them there 80% of the time. And then occasionally drop in a little promotion for your show. Definitely tweet when you have a new episode that comes out.
Yeah.
But you can curate content. You can post good articles on Twitter that people like. And then what are things you can do on Instagram?
On Instagram, I mean, you can... something that is really hot right now is Instagram stories. You can go on your Instagram stories daily. And because they're so easy to make and so like in the moment... kind of a thing, then you just take pictures of you, take little videos, inform your audience what you're doing, what's your next project. Instagram stories are not like your feed that they have to look pretty and colorful and in alignment with your brand. They're more open and easy, and because they last 24 hours and you get to decide which Instagram stories are you keeping on your highlights or not. So after 24 hours, they're gone. So that's why they are so fun to use, and you should be using them a lot. Yeah. And then the thing is, like, I know what you're thinking, that maybe, if I'm not promoting my podcast, if I'm only taking 20% of my content to promote my podcast, then I'm not promoting enough. That's not true. When you're providing content, people are more likely to check you out.
Yeah.
And just think about what you click on daily basis. You click on things that you are interested about. So are you going to click on somebody telling you, hey, listen to my latest episode, and they don't even describe it? Or so have you thought about this and this? Or running a poll on Twitter.
Yeah, running
or
poll.
A nice caption on Instagram. Just give people some food for thought, and then I'm going to be like, what is this about? Who is this person?
Yeah.
I'm interested. I want to listen to that podcast.
Yeah, I want to listen to that podcast after a while. After they develop a relationship with you on social media, after they fall in love with your post, you make them laugh on a continual basis, or you bring up interesting topics. So there's so many things. And if you've been tuning in for the last couple weeks, you know that we have tons of episodes on social media. You can check us out over on YouTube. We have 3 Twitter videos and 3 Instagram videos. But I think we should move on. I wish we could spend a whole hour just on the lack of social media strategy. And this is something we are continually learning the hard way.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. So number 6.
Oh, can I say this?
Oh, yeah. Number 6, I'll talk about it, but we'll let Veronica say the title of it.
Your podcast sounds like poo-poo. It does.
Your podcast sounds like poo-poo. Okay? There's no softer way of saying it. I mean, sounds like shit, guys. Okay? It's common, and we run into this a lot, too. Many people argue all the time. They're like, hey, well, I listen to such and such podcasts all the time. I'm subscribed to them, and their podcast kind of sounds like poo-poo. And they're famous, you know? So is sound quality really important? How do you feel about this? Do you think how important is sound quality when it comes to podcasting? Yeah. Now, obviously, we're biased because we're the Pod Sound
School, yes.
And we're obsessed with audio production. But like we said before, it's hard enough as it is to get people over to your landing page of your podcast to begin with. And then once they're there, if they hear things like the intro music is way too loud or way too soft, and then when the voices come in, they're jarring or harsh, or the host is way louder than the co-host, or there isn't continuity with the sound, the volumes are uneven, or clicking and popping and distortion, and all of a sudden a microphone's being unplugged. Yeah. Or static or loud
that's
buzzes.
A big one.
Those things are annoying to the ears, and we're going to have to really love you. You're either a celebrity or we're really in love with you to put up with that.
And no editing.
Editing's hard. You talk to your friends for an hour and a half. You talk to your buddies about the topic, and you get going for an hour and a half. Well, whoever's going to edit that is going to have to sit through that hour and a half again. So there's lots of tips and tricks to shorten things to make your editing better. There's also so many simple strategies that you can employ right away, even without buying new gear, to make your podcast sound better. We actually have a whole playlist on YouTube that's all about audio production. That's very helpful. We animated the videos and tried to make it pretty helpful, that you can go check out. It's worth it. Just learn about microphone technique, put a couple curtains. What can you do remotely if your host is recording in a different state than you, which is super common nowadays. There's lots of tricks you can do to improve your sound quality, because even if sound, you argue that it's not the most critical thing, even if it isn't, nobody's ever going to complain about pleasant sound. And pleasant sound and nice, controlled, professional sounding audio or prosumer sounding audio is never going to be responsible for chasing people away from your show. Let's move on to number 7.
Okay. Number 7 is your podcast is not easily searchable, which means that people can't find you. Just try to Google your podcast and see what comes up. Just put your name of the podcast and see what happens. maybe you don't have a website, and this is something that we're going to recommend to our podskis. I know it costs money, but it's going to do wonders for you and for your show. Be easy to find, easy to pronounce, easy to spell, and easy to click on.
Yes.
Just be easy as you can be. Easy.
Just be easy.
Just be easy.
Sell yourself.
Yes.
You're already out there.
Yeah, you're already out there. So just go all out.
Go all out.
Go all out, yes.
Okay, the number 8. And you have no idea just how many of these mistakes there are, so you're just going to have to hang around till the end. There could be 30, you know? Number 8, no pre-launch strategy.
Oh, boy.
Ugh. So many podcasters, we will post our podcast either to our web host or on SoundCloud or something, and we'll launch it and we'll start launching it before iTunes even approves it. Or even worse, what can be more detrimental is before we're on social media. So I know we get excited, but it's always a good idea to bake in as much time for a pre-launch strategy as possible. So often a lot of this comes down to time and money and resources because, you know, let's face it, our podcasts are side hustles, and it takes a long time before we can start thinking about monetizing off of our podcasts and things like that, unless you are using a podcast to drive more business to a business that's already established. So there's a lot of different types of situations there, but you don't really have to be discouraged if you miss the boat on this or if you miss the opportunities on this, because there's lots of different things you can do. You can do a big season 2 launch or season 3 launch. And the last mistake. So obviously there's probably a lot more mistakes, but we really have reached out and reviewed and talked with hundreds of podcasters, and we've been working with clients and helping people to build their shows. So these are just the mistakes that we compiled that are really the biggest ones.
Yeah, we couldn't find number 10.
But number 9 is bad format.
Bad format or no format at all.
Or no format at all.
Oh, boy.
That's not good.
Oh, boy.
What do you mean by format?
By format, I mean the way that the information is presented within the podcast. Some of the mistakes that I've seen, no, I've heard, is the formats that are unjustifiably too long, like this one.
Like this one. Oh, so we're talking about episodes, like episodic
We're talking
format.
like episode. Yeah, it's episodic format. They're unjustifiably way too long. That have little or no editing, that's a sin. No introduction or header, not giving people a reason to stick around until the end. No breaks or interludes. No use of music or ear candy.
The thing is, we didn't do so much of this at the first, and it really was hurting our growth. And then, you know, music and ear candy and interludes are great, especially for constant talking.
Yes.
Just to every now and then, and this is something you can do in post-production, just you find a creative place to stop it for 3 seconds. Let the brain kind of snap back into things. A little bit of music, some sound effects, things like that.
Don't overdo it, though.
But don't overdo it. And you'll find the nice balance. And obviously this is on a per show basis, and there's no easy way to talk about it. But bad formatting or no formatting at all usually comes down to just a little bit of laziness. You know, that's where going over this checklist, and with our YouTube release that happens on Wednesday, sometimes Thursdays, there's a free downloadable link that we'll put here we have a checklist with all of these that you can check off.
Yes, so don't feel overwhelmed. We got you covered.
Yeah, we got you covered. And come talk to us here.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're not doing any of these things, and you will notice there will be gradual growth to your show.
And then the other thing you can do is just to pick one on the list that you will address this week.
Yeah.
Little by little. You don't have to have everything perfect. We're just so proud of you that every week you come up with your show, that every week you put yourself out there, that you're vulnerable, that, you know, we know how it is to deal with criticism. We know how it is to deal with heartbreak, because we are creators too. So we're just proud of you. Keep at it and get better.
Yes. Keep getting better. Own your suckage. You know?
What is suckage?
It means like be okay with the parts of you that suck. Like take ownership of the fact that your podcast sounds like poo-poo. Don't get offended by it. and figure out how you're going to make it not sound like poo-poo
Yes.
anymore. Understand, why does my social media presence suck? What do they mean by branding? Take a few hours to Google branding and look into what branding is and ways that you can employ your co-host or spend a little time with some graphic design. Use things like Canva. There's so many resources.
We have a lot of free resources, and if you need our professional help, we're here to help you too. So contact us.
Yeah. Contact us.
podsoundschool.com.
Check out our free resources. Contact us any way that we can help. Honestly, we'd really like to help you grow your podcast. And with that, thanks so much, you guys. It's been
two things. No olviden hacer la tarea and leave a review and rate for us on iTunes.
And subscribe. Subscribing it's free.
It's free.
On YouTube
Amigos,
and iTunes.
You don't have to pay.
Subscribe.
You don't have to pay platica.
No,
free.
no platica. No platica. You just press the button and you subscribe. Platica, for those of you who don't know, means small cash.
This is getting
little
weird.
Change of cash.
Yeah, this isn't going well.
Okay. Okay, well, we love you guys and happy casting.
We love you. Happy casting.
We'll catch you next Tuesday.
Bye-bye.
At the Pod Show.